Ms. Eleanor, a brilliant and accomplished widow, was the driving force behind one of the city's largest and most successful companies. After her husband's passing, she took full control of their business, ensuring its steady growth. Known for her sharp mind and strategic thinking, Eleanor was admired in the business world, but remained a mystery to those around her. Despite her achievements and wealth, she often felt a deep sense of loneliness. Her grand mansion felt empty, and she kept her personal struggles hidden from everyone. Eleanor rarely allowed anyone into her inner circle, keeping her private life as guarded as the secrets behind her business success. Jack, the janitor at Ms. Eleanor's company, was a man who blended into the background, rarely noticed by others. He had worked at the company for years, quietly performing his duties with a sense of pride and diligence. Jack was not someone who sought attention. His unassuming demeanor and humble position meant that most employees walked past him without a second glance. Despite this, Jack was content with his life. He greeted everyone with a warm smile and never failed to offer a kind word to those who acknowledged him. Jack's routine was simple: cleaning floors, emptying trash bins, and ensuring the office remained spotless. Yet, beneath his modest exterior was a man who observed everything happening around him. From hurried meetings to whispered conversations, Jack had an almost invisible presence that allowed him to notice details others missed. He saw the dynamics between employees, the tension in the air during critical moments, and the true character of those who worked there. While many dismissed him as just a janitor, Jack took pride in his honesty and work ethic. He valued the small joys of life and found fulfillment in contributing to the company in his own quiet way, unaware that his keen observations and integrity would soon play a pivotal role in a way no one could have predicted. One late afternoon, as Jack was finishing his daily cleaning routine, something unexpected happened. Ms. Eleanor, the powerful and enigmatic owner of the company, approached him directly. Jack, who had never exchanged more than polite greetings with her, was momentarily taken aback. For a brief moment, he wondered if he had done something wrong. Instead, Ms. Eleanor addressed him with a calm yet serious tone. "Jack," she began, "I'd like to ask you for a favor." Jack blinked in surprise, pulling off his worn cap as a gesture of respect. "Of course, ma'am. What do you need?" he asked, his voice tinged with confusion. Eleanor studied him thoughtfully, as though making a difficult decision. Her usually sharp and commanding gaze seemed softer, revealing a glimpse of vulnerability. "There's a critical business meeting tomorrow," she explained slowly, "and I would like you to accompany me." Jack's mouth fell open in disbelief. "Me? Ma'am, I'm just the janitor. I don't know anything about business meetings," he stammered, shaking his head. "Why would you want me there?" Miss Eleanor smiled, a genuine expression that hinted at her hidden reasoning. "Exactly because you're not part of the business world," she said. "I've watched you over the years, Jack. You're observant, hardworking, and most importantly, honest. I need someone who can see things clearly without getting distracted by all the jargon and showmanship. That's why I trust you." Jack felt both honored and overwhelmed. He was just a janitor, someone used to being invisible. Yet here was the most powerful woman in the company telling him she valued him for qualities he hadn't thought anyone noticed. After a long pause, Jack nodded. "All right," he said quietly. "I'll do my best." Jack felt a whirlwind of emotions as he prepared for the business meeting Miss Eleanor had invited him to. Doubts clouded his mind. What could he, a janitor, possibly contribute to a high-level business meeting? He had no knowledge of mergers, acquisitions, or financial jargon. The thought of being in a room filled with powerful executives in tailored suits made him feel deeply out of place. Yet, He couldn't ignore the trust Miss Eleanor had placed in him. Her words lingered in his mind. "I need someone who can see things clearly." The next morning, Jack stood in front of his small mirror, nervously adjusting his old button-down shirt. He didn't own a suit or anything fancy, just his usual work uniform and the shirt he had saved for special occasions. "Well," he muttered to himself, "this will have to do." He placed his worn cap firmly on his head, a familiar comfort amidst the uncertainty, and set off for the office. The company's grand building looked even more imposing than usual as Jack walked through its gleaming hallways. Everything sparkled, the polished floors, the shining walls, even the light fixtures seemed to radiate wealth. Employees in expensive suits and dresses hurried past him, glancing at him with raised eyebrows and murmured whispers. Jack imagined their thoughts. "What's a janitor doing here?" His discomfort grew with every step, but he reminded himself of Miss Eleanor's trust. Finally, Jack reached the large wooden doors of the meeting room. His palms were sweaty as he hesitated for a moment, summoning the courage to push them open. When he entered, the room briefly fell silent. The contrast was stark. Jack, in his simple clothes, standing amidst a sea of finely dressed executives seated around an opulent table. Massive windows offered a panoramic view of the city, and the air seemed charged with tension. Mr. Eleanor, seated at the head of the table, gave Jack a reassuring smile. Her calm demeanor steadied his nerves, even as he shuffled awkwardly behind her. Across the table sat Mr. Blackstone, a tall man in an impeccable dark suit. His slicked-back hair and confident smirk exuded arrogance. Beside him sat his assistant, a stern woman who scribbled notes and whispered in his ear. Jack felt invisible, just as he always had. To the executives, he was clearly out of place, a janitor who didn't belong. But Miss Eleanor's subtle nod gave him a spark of confidence. He took a deep breath, determined to do what he could. Though he didn't fully understand why he was there, Jack trusted her judgment. Little did he know, the role he was about to play would prove far more critical than anyone, including himself, could have imagined. As the high-stakes meeting commenced, Jack positioned himself unobtrusively behind Ms. Eleanor, keenly observing the proceedings. The atmosphere was charged with tension, and Jack felt the weight of the moment. Mr. Blackstone, seated across from Ms. Eleanor, exuded confidence. His demeanor was polished, and his speech was laced with complex business jargon terms like synergy, leveraging assets, and strategic realignment flowed effortlessly from his lips. He presented charts and graphs, each more intricate than the last, aiming to overwhelm and impress. Miss Eleanor listened intently, her expression neutral, occasionally nodding as Mr. Blackstone elaborated on the supposed benefits of the proposed deal. He painted a picture of mutual gain, emphasizing how the merger would position both companies at the forefront of the industry. However, beneath the surface of his eloquent presentation, Jack sensed an undercurrent of manipulation. Jack's years of observing people had honed his ability to read between the lines. He noticed that Mr. Blackstone often deflected direct questions with more convoluted explanations, never providing clear answers. His assistant, seated beside him, would occasionally whisper prompts, ensuring he stayed on script. As the discussion progressed, Jack's unease grew. He observed that Mr. Blackstone's proposals seemed to disproportionately favor his own company. The terms were laden with clauses that, while sounding beneficial, would ultimately place Miss Eleanor's company at a disadvantage. Jack noted the subtle pressure tactics employed. tight deadlines for decision-making, insinuations that declining the offer would lead to missed opportunities, and a constant reiteration of the deal's inevitability. Despite his lack of formal business education, Jack's innate sense of integrity and his ability to perceive underlying motives made him wary. He could see that Mr. Blackstone was attempting to corner Miss Eleanor into a decision that would not serve her company's best interests. Mrs. Eleanor, maintaining her composure, continued to engage with Mr. Blackstone, asking probing questions and seeking clarifications. Jack admired her poise, but couldn't shake the feeling that Mr. Blackstone's persuasive tactics were designed to cloud judgment and rush the agreement. As the meeting neared its conclusion, Jack's attention was drawn to a document partially concealed under Mr. Blackstone's briefcase. It was not part of the materials being discussed, and its hidden placement seemed deliberate. Jack's instincts told him that this document could be crucial. Summoning his courage, he decided that he could not remain silent. The stakes were too high, and Miss Eleanor's trust in him compelled him to act. As the meeting progressed, Jack's attention was drawn to a document partially concealed beneath Mr. Blackstone's briefcase. The paper's deliberate placement piqued his curiosity, suggesting it was intentionally hidden. Jack's instincts, honed from years of keen observation, told him this document could be significant. Summoning his courage, Jack cleared his throat and spoke up, his voice steady despite the tension. "Excuse me, Mr. Blackstone," he began. "I couldn't help but notice there's a document under your briefcase. It might be relevant to our discussion." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to Jack. Mr. Blackstone's confident demeanor faltered momentarily, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. He glanced down at the briefcase, his hand subtly shifting to cover the exposed edge of the paper. Mrs. Eleanor's gaze sharpened, her attention now fully on Mr. Blackstone. "Is there something you'd like to share with us, Mr. Blackstone?" she inquired, her tone calm but authoritative. Mr. Blackstone hesitated, then forced a smile. "Oh, this? It's just some preliminary notes, nothing finalized. I didn't think it was pertinent to today's meeting." Miss Eleanor's eyes narrowed slightly. "I'd like to see it, if you don't mind." With no reasonable way to refuse, Mr. Blackstone reluctantly moved his briefcase, revealing the document. Mr. Eleanor reached across the table and took the paper, her expression unreadable as she began to read. As she scanned the contents, a subtle tension filled the room. Jack watched as Mrs. Eleanor's eyes flicked over the text, her lips pressing into a thin line. When she finished, she placed the document on the table, her gaze locking onto Mr. Blackstone. "Mr. Blackstone," she said evenly, "this document outlines terms that are significantly different from what we've been discussing. It appears you intended to present this after securing my agreement on the initial proposal." Mr. Blackstone opened his mouth to respond, but Miss Eleanor held up a hand. "This meeting is over," she declared. "I will not engage in business with someone who operates in bad faith." Turning to Jack, she offered a genuine smile. "Thank you, Jack. Your attention to detail has saved us from a potentially disastrous agreement." Jack felt a surge of pride and relief. He had stepped out of his comfort zone and, in doing so, had made a significant impact. The respect in Miss Eleanor's eyes was a reward he hadn't anticipated, but deeply appreciated. Miss Eleanor's eyes scanned the concealed document, her expression shifting from curiosity to steely resolve. The paper outlined terms starkly different from those discussed, revealing a scheme to transfer her company's most valuable assets to Mr. Blackstone's control. The language was deliberately complex, likely intended to obscure the true intent. Maintaining her composure, Miss Eleanor placed the document on the table and fixed her gaze on Mr. Blackstone. "Mr. Blackstone," she began, her voice steady, This document presents terms that are not only inconsistent with our discussions, but also detrimental to my company's interests. It appears you intended to finalize this agreement without my full awareness." Mr. Blackstone's confident facade cracked. "Mr. Eleanor, there must be a misunderstanding. That document was a mere draft, not meant for today's meeting." Miss Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "A draft hidden under your briefcase during a critical negotiation? That strains credibility." The room's atmosphere grew tense. Mr. Blackstone's assistant shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. Miss Eleanor continued, "Such deceptive practices are unacceptable. I will not engage in business with individuals who operate without integrity." Turning to Jack, she offered a sincere smile. "Jack, your vigilance has protected us from a grave error. Your honesty and attention to detail are invaluable." Jack felt a surge of pride. "Thank you, Miss Eleanor. I only did what I thought was right." Mrs. Eleanor nodded. "And that's precisely why I trusted you. Your perspective is a reminder that integrity transcends titles." As the meeting concluded, Mr. Blackstone hastily gathered his belongings, his earlier arrogance replaced by unease. Miss Eleanor's decisive action had not only safeguarded her company, but also reaffirmed the importance of trust and transparency in business. Jack left the room with a newfound sense of purpose. He realized that his role, though humble, had a significant impact. Ms. Eleanor's acknowledgement of his contribution reinforced his belief in the value of integrity and the difference one person can make. This experience marked a turning point for both Miss Eleanor and Jack. For Miss Eleanor, it was a reaffirmation of her commitment to ethical business practices. For Jack, it was an awakening to his potential beyond his janitorial duties. Their partnership, built on mutual respect and trust, became a cornerstone of the company's continued success. In the days that followed, Ms. Eleanor implemented measures to ensure greater transparency in all dealings. She also encouraged employees at all levels to voice concerns, recognizing that valuable insights often come from unexpected places. Jack, inspired by the experience, sought opportunities to further his education, aiming to contribute more meaningfully to the company. Ms. Eleanor supported his endeavors, providing resources and mentorship. Together, they exemplified how integrity and collaboration can lead to success, fostering a culture where every individual's contribution is valued. Ms. Eleanor turned to Jack, her expression softening into a genuine smile. "Jack," she began, "your keen observation and courage have been invaluable today. By bringing that document to my attention, you've protected this company from a potentially disastrous decision. I cannot thank you enough." Jack felt a surge of pride and relief. "I was just doing what I thought was right, ma'am," he replied modestly. Mrs. Eleanor nodded appreciatively. "It's precisely that integrity and attentiveness that make you so valuable. You've reminded me that true insight can come from anyone, regardless of their position." Meanwhile, Mr. Blackstone's confident demeanor had crumbled. His face flushed and he fumbled with his papers, clearly flustered by the unexpected turn of events. The room's atmosphere had shifted, leaving him exposed and defeated. Miss Eleanor's acknowledgement of Jack's actions not only highlighted his bravery, but also underscored the importance of honesty and vigilance within the company. Jack's intervention had averted a significant threat, reaffirming that every team member's perspective is valuable. As Jack left the meeting room, he found himself reflecting deeply on the trust Miss Eleanor and her late husband had placed in him over the years. He recalled the numerous occasions when Mr. and Mrs. Thompson had paused to exchange a few words with him, always treating him with respect and kindness. Despite his role as the janitor, these interactions, though brief, had left a lasting impression on Jack, making him feel valued in a way he hadn't fully appreciated until now. The events of the day had been nothing short of transformative for Jack. His decision to speak up during the meeting, driven by a sense of duty and integrity, had not only safeguarded the company, but had also reshaped his own self-perception. He realized that his contributions went beyond his daily cleaning tasks. His observations and moral compass had made a significant impact. This newfound recognition instilled in Jack a profound sense of pride and belonging. He no longer saw himself as just the janitor, but as an integral part of the company's fabric. The acknowledgement from Miss Eleanor reinforced this sentiment, making him feel that his voice mattered and that he had a rightful place within the organization. With this experience, Jack's confidence grew. He began to understand that one's value isn't solely defined by their job title, but by their actions and the integrity they bring to their role. This realization empowered him to take on new challenges and to view his work through a lens of purpose and significance. In the days that followed, Jack continued his duties with a renewed vigor. His interactions with colleagues became more engaged, and he found himself contributing ideas and observations that were well received. The transformation in his self-view not only benefited him personally, but also enriched the workplace environment, fostering a culture where every individual's contribution was recognized and valued. Following the pivotal meeting, Miss Eleanor and Jack developed a mutual respect that transcended traditional workplace hierarchies. Recognizing Jack's keen insight and unwavering integrity, Miss Eleanor began to involve him in various company matters, valuing his unique perspective. This collaboration not only enriched the company's decision-making processes, but also fostered a more inclusive and open organizational culture. For Jack, this experience was transformative. He no longer viewed himself merely as the janitor, but as a valued contributor to the company's success. The trust Ms. Eleanor placed in him bolstered his confidence, inspiring him to pursue further personal and professional development. This shift in their relationship underscored the profound impact of integrity and trust in the workplace. By looking beyond conventional roles and recognizing the potential in every individual, Ms. Eleanor and Jack exemplified how breaking down status barriers can lead to meaningful partnerships and organizational growth. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. If this story is interesting to you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell to follow the next stories.